Hello and welcome to Seeds of Literacy Math Club Review. If you're new to the Math Club, hopefully this will be a way to kind of bring you up to speed on what we've been doing. And if you are an existing member of Math Club, hopefully this will be a good review for you. We've been working on some journaling, and we've also been looking at some brain teasers, some problems that kind of get our minds going as Math Club starts. But one of the key parts of Math Club is figuring out some real world kinds of things. So we all took a survey a few weeks back and decided that putting a recipe together and preparing something for the rest of the students might be a good way that we could practice a lot of our math skills. And with the trail mix that we're working on, we think we've got a pretty good blend put together this week, and we want to be able to do some calculations that will be able to tell us how much we need to buy, how much we need in each serving in terms of ingredients, and maybe where we might want to shop for that so that we get the best value. So let's get to it. So here's a list of the ingredients that the class decided to put into the trail mix. So we've got cranberries, raisins, rice checks, unsalted peanuts, because we want to try to be a little bit healthier, pretzel minis, M&Ms, and pumpkin seeds. Now we'll also know that we need to be a little bit careful with these peanuts since some people have allergies, so we'll have to take that into account later. So when the group mixed together these ingredients, they tried to find out what were the best proportions. So for cranberries, they put in 0.5 cups. And for those working on fractions, 0.5 is 1/2. For raisins, we had 0.25 cups. And 0.25, and this is a good one to memorize as well as 0.5, 0.25 is 1/4 or 1/4. You can think of it like 25 cents is a quarter. So 1/4 cup of raisins. They put in 1.5 cups of rice checks. So I'll write that as a mixed number. 1.5. So by mixing that amount of each of these, we had a set of ingredients that looked really good and that we were happy with, that we thought would be a good mix of each ingredient. But just like this, the amount was a little bit more than we'd want to give to one person. So we took that amount and we divided it up, and we figured out that this amount would serve 6 people. So we know that 1/2 cup of cranberries and 1/4 cup of raisins and so forth, that would all, when we mix it all together, that would serve 6 people. So think about how much of each ingredient would serve one person. So what would be one serving? So would that would be a multiplication or a division. If we wanted to divide, there's a clue. If we wanted to divide this up into 6 single servings. Okay, so here's the thing. We want to make a bunch of 1 serving sizes, and we want to serve, let's say there's 30 people in the whole class. So we want to serve 30 people a 1 serving size. So we're going to figure out, and we already kind of did, how much ingredient, how many cups of each ingredient are in each single serving. Now, if we're going to serve 30 people, what would we need to do to each of those numbers of cups of ingredients if we wanted to serve 30 people. Now, if you said we need to multiply that by 30, that would be the answer. So we need to take each ingredient and how much is in one single serving and multiply it by 30 to know how much we need for 30 people. But there's a problem there too. And let me tell you what it is. So when we buy our products, they aren't in cups. They're usually in ounces. Okay, they're a weight in ounces. So since they're in ounces, but we're doing our measuring in cups, we need to have a way to know how to convert cups into ounces. So we need to know the weight of a cup of each ingredient. Okay, so let's figure out how to do that. One way would be if we had a food scale. We could just fill up a cup, weigh it, and then if we really wanted to be accurate, we would then figure out that weight, dump it out, figure out the weight of the cup, and subtract it from that other weight, and then we'd have the exact weight of the food. The thing is, we don't have a scale. So how do we get around that problem? Well, let me tell you. So this is a box of raisins. And remember that it has this weight to it, which was 22.58 ounces. And I know from measuring that the contents of this are 4 cups of raisins. So 4 of these into 1 of these. Okay? All right? So if I know that there's 4 cups and that weighs 22.58 ounces, how much would 1 cup of that weigh? So if you've thought about that, if 4 cups weighs 22.58 ounces, 1 cup would be 22.58 divided by 4. Okay, or 4 into 22.58, if you like to think of it that way. Okay, so by looking at the weight on each package and measuring how much is in each package, we can figure out how much 1 cup of every one of our ingredients weighs. So let's take, for example, rice Chex. We want to find ounces per cup. So another way to write ounces per cup, and I'll use the abbreviation OZ for ounces. Another way to write that is ounces per cup. And as you can see, that's a fraction. We have ounces per cup, or ounces in each cup. So let's look at those values up here and see if we can figure out how many ounces are in each cup, since we know that 11 cups weighs 12 ounces. So think about how you might solve that problem. Okay, so here's how we'll do it. We know that we need to put ounces over cups, so we'll put 12 ounces over 11 cups. So now we have a fraction. So we can look at that and solve it in different ways. That's kind of the nice thing about math. There's a lot of different ways to get to the same answer. So let's look at that fraction, that improper fraction, since the numerator is bigger than the denominator. So 12 11ths what is that the same as in mixed numbers? Think about that. Okay, so that is 1 and 1/11. Okay, so they're 1 and 1/11 ounces per cup. So that means that for Rice Chex, every cup of Rice Chex is going to weigh 1 and 1/11 ounces. You might have noticed that when we take big problems like this, it's best if you break them into smaller problems. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're setting up a whole bunch of small problems that we can solve one at a time. Now, part of solving what that fraction might be that we saw in the number of ounces per cup of Rice Chex is to take that fraction and turn it into a division problem. So I know that people are at different levels of their knowledge of long division, and that's okay. If you're not quite there yet, that's all right. You can just continue on through the video. If you are more comfortable with doing division problems that have a number and a remainder, we'll have you give that a try on a problem that I'll show you next. If you're more comfortable expressing the answer to a division problem as a number with a fraction for a remainder, give that a try. And if you're to a level where you can do the division problem and get a decimal answer, then you can try that. Now this is kind of a tricky decimal in that you'll need to round it. So we'll have you round it to 1 decimal place. Okay, so here's our fraction again that we're going to try to solve with division. So if you'd like, you can pause the video and see how you might set this up as a division problem. And then I'll tell you in a moment how to do that. Okay, so you'll take this, and when we set it up as a division problem, it is 11 into 12. Another way of saying that is 12 divided by 11. So we'll set that up, and it'll look like this. So what I'd like you to do now is to pause the video and to try to solve that. And when you do it, you might have it as a number with a remainder, or as a number with a fraction for a remainder, or as a decimal number. And if you do a decimal number, round it to the nearest tenth. So if you want to pause it now and try it. Okay, so here's the answers. So if you use it as a number with a remainder, you should end up with 1, remainder 1. If you use it as a number with a fraction for a remainder, you should end up with 1 and 1/11. And if you try to do it as a decimal, you should end up with 1.1. And if you got stuck on any of these, remember that there's that other video that you can watch, and I'll take you through all 3 of these steps. So we know now how many ounces every cup weighs. We know what proportions are in our recipe. We know how much each, we're going to know very shortly in our next class what each serving is, and then we can multiply that by how many servings we need for the whole class to figure out how much to buy for every ingredient. So we'll do that next time. See you then.